Welcome to the channel Masters of Consciousness. In today's episode, we will immerse ourselves in the extraordinary world of spiritual understanding through the teachings of one of the deepest masters of Advaita Vedanta, Ramana Maharshi. This great teacher did not write treatises or give grand lectures. His life was a lesson in itself. What he taught emerged from his presence, from the silence he emanated, and from simple words that led not so much to knowledge as to self-awareness. The essence of his teachings was one question: who am I? This question was not meant for philosophical contemplation, but for direct experience of oneself as that which is unchanging, always present, free from identification with the body, mind, and emotions. In his gaze, suffering arises from mistaken identification, from the transient, from the thought that we are our stories, fears, ambitions. Meanwhile, the true self never changes. It is silence that endures regardless of what happens on the surface of experience. From this perspective, spiritual practice does not involve seeking something new, but rather removing what is false until only the eternal remains, pure presence. It was not about rejecting the world or emotions. The point was in penetrating through their surface, in seeing that the observer, that which is conscious, is never disturbed. Self-awareness is our home, a place of rest, free from tension. Everything else comes and goes: thoughts, feelings, bodies, even spiritual ideas. But the one who is aware remains unchanged. In his teachings there was no room for excess. He did not recommend many practices, rituals, or intellectual analyses. Simplicity was the key. Return to the source. At any moment one can ask, who is experiencing this feeling? Who is thinking this thought? Where is the I that says it suffers? In this way, attention returned to what is primal and pure. It was not about finding a verbal answer, but about falling into the silence that lies behind the question. This approach may seem too simple or even naive to a mind accustomed to complicating, analyzing, and seeking complex solutions. Yet, it is precisely simplicity that is the hardest to grasp, because it does not give the mind a foothold, does not allow it to show off. True knowledge does not belong to thought, it belongs to presence, and presence does not need confirmation, it simply is. On this path, it was not about striving for some mystical state or ecstasy. It was not a path of achievement, but of surrender. Everything that is acquired, beliefs, fears, images of oneself, was to be recognized as impermanent and abandoned. What remains does not need a label or description. It is silence, which is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of presence, conscious and peaceful. A person who lives in harmony with this truth does not need to prove anything. They do not live in opposition to the world, but nor do they allow themselves to be dominated by it. Everything happens naturally, without coercion. In action, there is no fear because there is no ego wanting to control. Spontaneity remains. Such a life is simple, yet deeply authentic. In this perspective, there is no such thing as an enlightened and unenlightened person. Everyone is already pure consciousness. The only difference is that some have recognized this, while others still do not identify with it. Therefore, there is no need to change, improve, or enhance oneself. One only needs to dare to look direct beyond the layer of thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and notice who one truly is. This recognition does not occur through intellectual understanding, but through direct insight into oneself. It is not a temporal experience, it's a sudden stopping, in which everything becomes obvious. In this moment now, already, without the need to wait for tomorrow, without the need to attain spiritual levels. The truth is always here, not in a distant future. The silence that emanates from this is not passivity. It is a deep, conscious presence that acts with full awareness, without tension. Such a person can work, talk, walk the street, but internally they are calm, grounded, free. This cannot be learned from a book. It can only be seen within oneself and regarded as the only reality worth relying on. Importantly, they do not reject the world. They do not preach the need to escape from life or abandon responsibilities. They believe that anyone can reach the truth, regardless of where they are or what they do. External forms of life do not matter. The internal quality of presence does. One can be in the world, but not belong to its illusions. One can work, live in a family, make decisions, and at the same time be in full contact with what is eternal. The true transformation brought by this realization does not lie in changing external behavior, but in a complete shift in perspective. When identification with personal history and ego ceases, fear, tension, and the need for control disappear, not because someone has learned this, but because there is no longer anyone who was previously afraid and desired. This is not physical death. It is the death of the illusion of who one is, and at the same time, the birth of true life. In the silence of the heart, the need for comparisons, judgments, and the fight for recognition dissolves, because there is no longer anyone who wants to stand out. Naturalness remains. Life becomes light, not because everything is easy, but because there is no longer resistance to what is. Each moment becomes perfect in itself, without the need to change it. Such an approach does not lead to passivity, but to action in harmony with what is real. One of the most important aspects of these teachings was internal honesty, the readiness to look without escape, without deceiving oneself. Just stop and ask, who am I without this thought, without this emotion, without this story? What remains when everything transient is set aside? It requires no effort. On the contrary, it requires relinquishing effort, control and striving. The silence in which he resided was not emptiness, but a space full of peace, love, and clarity. People who entered it experienced deep peace, often without words. It was a space that reminded everyone that everything they seek is already within them. Nothing needed to be added. They only needed to dare to see. Spirituality in this approach did not consist of becoming someone else, but of discovering who one already is. There was no room for spiritual competition, comparisons, or hierarchies. The truth was accessible to everyone, and always at this very moment. Not tomorrow, not after many years of practice, but here and now. It was enough to stop looking outside and turn attention inward. It was not a spectacular or showy path. It was quiet, subtle, but immensely powerful. It worked like a fire that slowly burned away what was untrue, until only light remained. Awareness of oneself as pure presence, free from form, yet capable of encompassing everything. In this light, all spiritual pursuits become secondary if they do not lead to direct insight. It's not about collecting experiences, gathering knowledge or rituals, but ultimately about abandoning them, like a boat that is used to cross to the other side and then left behind. True freedom is a state in which nothing more needs to be done, because everything needed already exists. From this perspective, all the problems of the world, fears, conflicts, suffering, have one source: the forgetfulness of true identity. When a person believes they are separate, that they must fight, prove, defend, tensions and suffering arise. However, when they recognize that they are consciousness, impersonal, unlimited, then an inner peace appears, which does not depend on circumstances. It does not mean a life without emotions. It means a life in which emotions can appear, but no longer have the power to dominate. They emerge in a space that neither judges nor rejects them. There is only presence that encompasses everything, without being anything of it. Such a life ceases to be a search. It becomes conscious being. Every moment is full. There is no longer a need to control the future or analyze the past. The present, this one moment, is enough. It is home. It is everything. This was not a teaching that can be confined to a book or a system. It was a living truth that anyone can discover within themselves, not through someone else, not through a guru, not through dogma, but through one's own quiet gaze inward. The question, "Who am I?" does not lead to an intellectual answer. It leads to silence. And in that silence, realization is born that everything we have been searching for was never separate. Thank you for being with us on this deep journey to the essence of consciousness. We hope this episode inspired you to look within yourself with gentleness, courage, and tenderness. If you felt something real, something that goes beyond words, that is a sign that you are on the right path. We warmly invite you to the next episodes on the channel Masters of Consciousness. May presence be with you at every moment. Thank you for your attention, and see you soon.